Hello everyone, welcome to this next session in the series of CCIE DevNet videos. The tool that we are discussing today is IAC Infrastructure as Code or Configuration Management Automation tool called as Ansible. Right. So let's jump in. The overview of this session is going to be like this. We'll discuss what is Ansible. We'll see how Ansible works and discuss some terminology which is involved when we talk about Ansible. And then we'll see how to work with network devices using Ansible. And then we'll discuss how exactly you will be using Ansible to issue certain ad hoc commands. And then we'll be writing some scripts, right, called as playbooks to automate different tasks. Okay, as we discussed, what is Ansible? It is an open source IT automation tool, right? That's a very generic term, but what you can use it is to automate the configuration management. For example, you have your servers, network devices on which you want to perform some configuration tasks, right? Let's say you have Linux servers on which you want to update certain files, install certain packages, or you have network devices where you want to add certain configuration via config commands, right? For all these tasks, you can automate them using Ansible. So what all it can do is it can automate provisioning, it can automate configuration management, it can automate application deployment, orchestration, and other such manual IT processes. It is primarily based on Python, and it can be extended, right? Apart from the functionality which is already given, we can write additional modules, right, to extend its functionality. That's what many companies like Cisco and other network device providers have done by providing their own modules on top of the core Ansible that comes. Okay. Coming to how Ansible works, right? Basically, it is primarily it is written in Python, and it uses Python programs, right, which we call them as modules to carry out automation tasks. So under the hood, there is a bunch of Python programs which are running, which are actually carrying out the Ansible commands that you issue. Now, configuration management is performed on the remote tasks. So the machine where Ansible is installed, it talks to the remote machines via SSH primarily. If the target machine has Python installed, now we said the modules, right? The Ansible modules are nothing but Python programs. So you might expect that, yes, Python should be installed on the target machine, but that is not the case. So that's not the case. Okay? In case of servers, we can expect, in case of regular Linux servers, we can expect that Python should be installed on the target machines as well. In such cases, Ansible simply pushes this Python small modules called as small Python programs called as modules onto the target system, uses the underlying Python executable which is there, which is installed there, and executes those programs, and which in turn carry out the tasks. But suppose there are other kind of devices like network devices where Python may or may not be installed, right? In such cases, what it does is it executes the program locally, and the result of the command is pushed to the remote system via the underlying shell. The shell which is present on the target system, it uses that to execute the command to carry out the task. Okay. Normally when we talk about Ansible, these are the following terms that we normally keep hearing. Right? Control node. Right? Control node is the machine where Ansible is installed. From everything happens here. Right? Then we have something known as managed nodes. Managed nodes are the remote systems whose configuration management we are trying to automate. Right? From the control node, we are trying to automate the configuration management on the managed nodes. That's why we call them as managed nodes, because they are being managed by the control node. Now we have something called as inventory, which is nothing but the list of all these managed nodes which are being managed by this control node. A schematic diagram for Ansible would look like this, right? We have a control node, which should primarily be a Linux machine, because Ansible works only on Linux-based machines like Mac and Linux, not on Windows machines, right? So control node should primarily be Linux-based. And then you have managed nodes, which are like sitting remotely. But on the control node, the reference of these managed nodes is maintained in a file called as inventory. Right now, this inventory file is created as a INI file, initialization format. Then we have YAML, and YAML is a data integer format similar to XML or JSON. We write playbooks or scripts, Ansible scripts, also called as playbooks, in YAML format. These are primarily the instructions, what automation tasks to be carried out on the target systems. Now coming to network devices, as we said, like network devices are slightly different. The way network devices work, because there is no Python installed on them, we'll have to use different connection mechanisms, right? So though primarily it uses SSH, it uses other protocols like netconf, REST API, REST APIs, CCNP, and so on to establish connectivity to network devices to be able to carry out automation tasks on them. Okay. Now, a typical Ansible ad hoc command would look like this, right? Directly using the executable called as Ansible. Then we say on which all hosts, on which all machines, and this needs to be executed. And then we use the -m flag to specify which module, right, to be used. When we say here -m shell, there's a Python program called as shell.py, which is actually providing the functionality which is mentioned here. -a are the commands which should be given to the shell. So when we execute this, this is like there is nothing network related that is happening. This is typical Linux command. So it expects to find a target node as a Linux machine. Right? So if it finds it, it connects to the shell using the logic which is mentioned in shell.py, and it is going to go and execute this command free -m, which typically which is used for showing the memory consumption. So that was a example for an Ansible ad hoc command. Then we have we'll see what is a playbook and how playbooks are written. Right? Playbooks are similar to programs that we write, program or a script, like in Linux shell scripting. Either we can directly give shell commands, ad hoc commands on the shell directly, or we can put them in a sh file and save it as a script and then execute it later. Same way in Python also, we have Python CLI or Python interpreter, where we can directly give Python commands, or we have we put all the commands in a file and name it with the .py extension and then execute it. Same way, Ansible also has these two options. Either you can execute the commands in an ad hoc manner if you just want to carry out some discrete tasks, or you can store them in a script called as Ansible playbook, right? Which is in the format, which is in the YAML format. Now this playbook is a logical unit for all that is happening inside that playbook, right? Playbook consists of plays. Plays in turn consists of tasks, right? Playbook can consist of multiple plays. Plays in turn consists of multiple tasks. So at the play level, we specify what are the tasks which are to be carried out as part of this play, and which all hosts this play will go and connect to and perform this task. Okay. So a typical YAML playbook is going to look like this. This is the YAML document style by YAML. Right? The three dots on top denotes the start of YAML document. Then after that, the list that you see, like the hyphen that you see, is list. Right? Hyphen is used to denote lists in YAML. Now, how do we know? How do we like segregate these commands or elements? Is using indentation, right? all the elements which are at the same level of indentation are treated as siblings, right? Siblings to each other. The commands which are slightly indented inside are known as children, right? For example, name, host, remote user, these are all siblings because they are at the same indentation level, including the task. But inside the task, you have name and the other modules. So these other elements become children of tasks. Now this task and this task are at the same level again. So they are like siblings of this parent node called as task. Okay. So this indentation is very important. Any small mistake here, an extra space here, a space missing there, can cause syntax errors, right? Which is going to be a little tough to debug because Ansible gives very vague answers pointing to lines of code saying probably error is there at that line. Okay. And another thing to remember is while typing these commands, you should give this indentation only using spaces and not tab, right? If you give tab, it is again going to complain. Okay. So another example of playbook, typically the first section, right, refers to the section 1 here, refers to the inventory file, right? In this inventory file, for example, like I have specified the names of 2 iOS XE devices, right? This is a iOS XE device 1, iOS XE device 2. Now I can group them both, saying this is my group. Both these devices fall under this group called as iOS XE. Then I come to the playbook. I start my document and then I start writing my first play, then give some name to the play and then define what are the hosts to which this playbook should connect and try to execute the task, right? Now this host, I can either specify name of the individual individual device, or I can specify name of the group. If I specify the name of the group and there are multiple devices in it, this playbook, right, this entire playbook will be executed once for each device, right? And then here we can specify what is the connection mode to be used, right? In case of network devices, we typically use a connection mode called as network CLI. Earlier, we used to call a mode called as local, which means since Python may or may not be installed on the remote device, when we say local, it executes the Python code locally, and as I said, like takes the result of this local execution, goes and executes on the remote device via the shell which is present on the remote device. But now they have deprecated the local connection mode and they have standardized this thing called as network underscore CLI, which means network command line interface, which is nothing but the shell which is going to be present on the systems. It's a logical representation of that. Then we have something called as gather underscore facts no. Basically, what Ansible does is Ansible in the background, when it's running, it keeps collecting a lot of data, a lot of useful data from the remote devices it is connecting to. These data are known as Ansible facts. Now, most of the times we will not be using these variables. This data is nothing but like what is the IP address of the host, what is its IPv4 address, IPv6 address, what are the network interfaces which are there, what is the file system which are being used, what is the operating system, which version of operating, almost complete information is captured. But most of the times we will not be using this information, right? And gathering the facts, because it collects a huge amount of data, it's going to take significant amount of time. When you're working with 1 or 2 devices, it is fine. But when you're working with hundreds of devices, it is going to add a lot of overhead to your playbook execution. So unless you know that you are going to use this additional data which is being captured automatically by Ansible, we should turn it off, right? That's what we are doing here by saying gather underscore facts to know, and do not gather the additional information. Then we start defining the task under this heading task, and we give a name to task ideally, because when the runtime execution happens, we can identify this playbook and the task by the name we have given. Right here, now each task uses one module. Module is nothing but a Python code, which is there underneath, which knows how to carry out certain tasks. In this case, the task that we are doing, the task that we are using uses a module called as iOS underscore command. So in this Python file, they have figured out how to establish connectivity to the how to issue commands to iOS device. Right? Why we are using iOS is because we are connecting to iOS XE devices. Right? If you are connecting to, let's say, Arista devices, there will be a module called as Arista underscore command. Right? XR devices, similarly, for different types of devices, these things vary. The network operating system type underscore command. Now, to this iOS command is like a typical function. To that, we need to pass the parameters, which are nothing but the actual commands to be executed. Right? For example, like this show command, show CCNP community. Then we also can issue configuration command using iOS config. Right? Typically, we give the configuration lines like this as a list. Right? We'll be seeing this during the demo. So how do we, we have already seen how playbook looks like. So it is basically describing the previous diagram. What is 1 describing, what is 2 describing, what is 3 describing, and so on. Right? 1 is inventory file showing the list of hosts. 2 is a header section showing name of the plane, nodes it wants to connect to, and what is the connection mode to be used. 3 is list of tasks showing the module to be used, like iOS command and iOS config. 4 is the entire block makes one play within the playbook. Right? If you want to add another play, you can take this entire section and paste it below and then modify accordingly. Okay. Now we'll see a demo, and as part of this demo, we are going to see. Right? Now, for Ansible to run, we need some configuration information to be provided, right? Which we do typically via a file called as ansible.cfg. By default, and when you install Ansible, this ansible.cfg file is present in /etc/Ansible inside that ansible.cfg. But having that at a central location, though it is good, it's not very practical, because if I'm working on 2 different projects, 2 different types of work, the configuration settings which I might be specifying might be different, which I'll be specifying might be different. Right? So I would like to maintain the configuration file at my project level. Same way inventory also, right? The list of inventory for project 1 could be different from project 2. And default location of inventory is /etc Ansible host file, which I'll have to keep changing if I have to use the same file for different projects. Instead, I would like to maintain at the project level, project specific inventory. Right? Now, but then how do we instruct Ansible to read this configuration file and this inventory file, which is created at the project level? We'll see. Now, for example, I'm here. I'll create, let's say, a new project, new directory called as, let's say, net underscore auto project, network automation project, and move there. Check. By the way, Ansible, as I said, Ansible can be installed only on Linux device. The simplest way to install Ansible is sudo apt install Ansible. Right? It can also be installed using Python package manager called pip, but that's not recommended for starting users. Right? So simplest way to use is sudo apt install Ansible. Sometimes it might expect to find the repository, so we can check. Yeah, we have to add this repository. Sudo apt add repository ppa:/ansible/ansible, right? And then sudo apt update, sudo apt install Ansible. That's all you have to do. Just 3 commands. Sudo apt add repository. This is the repository online where Ansible setup files are located. Add it to the apt repository, update the repository, and then just use apt to install. Right? This command are almost same for all Linux flavors. Right? Once it is installed, we can check using Ansible version. Right? So you see, when I check Ansible version, in addition to giving version, it is giving a host of other information. Right? A lot of information. First one is config_file. Right? Now, by default, Ansible is programmed to expect a configuration file in the current folder. If it is not present in the current folder, it is going to go to the lib folder. If it is not present there, it is going to go to /etc Ansible and try to pick up the ansible.cfg, which is mentioned there. Now, in my case, I have not mentioned it. ls okay, Ansible directory itself is not there. So that's the reason it is trying to find it there. And since it does not exist, it is saying I'm not able to find the configuration file by setting it to none. Right? Now we will create now since we are inside our project directory, we'll create an Ansible config file here. Right? Basically, Ansible config file contains a lot of information, but most of those details are provided as default values. So if you do not provide value for all those things, their corresponding default values will be taken. So the only thing that you would like to change is to tell Ansible where to locate your repository. That's what we normally put in our ansible.cfg file. So we'll say nano ansible.cfg. We'll create a section called as defaults. Inside defaults, we'll specify inventory. This is the keyword, right? We are telling where to find your inventory. So assume that in the current directory itself, we are going to create a file called as hosts, which will act as your inventory. So we'll specify ./hosts, which means that for the host file or for the inventory file, you look in the current directory for a file called as hosts. Okay. Now you try to check the Ansible version. It has found ansible.cfg in the current location. So it is showing you the config file location. Home, expert work, etc. Ansible.cfg. But we do not have the host file yet, so we'll have to create one. The network device that we'll be using is, as we have already seen, in this topology, the router called as R1. Right? Its name is R1. Its IP address is 192.168.255.150. Right? Obviously, it expects the IP address to be passed when it's trying to connect via SSH. So we'll specify the name of the device, host name, as R1. Now we have to substantiate this name by saying that what is the host which is associated with this name. Right? Now there is a built-in variable called as Ansible_host. In this, we'll put the IP address 192.168.255.150. Now you can either leave it like this, or you want to associate a group with this. Right? Now this is a group of iOS routers. Right now it is only one, but let's say tomorrow you want to add more routers, you can directly add under this group. Now what is the advantage of having groups is, like you would like to carry out similar kind of configuration tasks on similar kind of devices, right? So instead of specifying them separately and running your playbook on each device again and again and again, you can define them, you can group them into one group name, and you can specify the group name inside your playbook so that it goes and connects to all the devices which are present, which are part of this group, and then executes the configuration tasks. Right. Now, there are a few more details which are required for it to connect. For example, like we are saying it's a network device and we are going to use network connection mode. So we'll have to tell what is the type of operating system, right? So we have multiple options. Either I can specify here Ansible underscore network underscore OS is equal to iOS, right? I can do this. But then I'll have to do this for every host that I'm going to add. And this is going to be common. Unlike IP address, which will keep changing from host to host, network OS is going to be common. So there's no point specifying it so many places. So what we'll do is we'll create variables at the group level. What is the name of our group? iOS underscore routers. And this is the name of our group. We say :vars. And then we'll specify Ansible underscore network underscore OS is equal to iOS. So that takes care of your what is your network operating system. So that network CLI will know which specific version of the CLI to be invoked. And yeah, we got the CLI, but we need to log in. We need to log into the CLI, right? We need to specify username and password. So we have to specify Ansible underscore user. Right? In my case, username is admin. I also need password, Ansible underscore password. In my case, it is Cisco. Of course, this is a kind of security threat or a kind of violation or vulnerability, as we call it, because the password is being stored as a clear text, right? This is not a recommended way, but there's a feature in Ansible called as Ansible Vault, which is like a secret vault with highly encrypted mechanism provided to store sensitive information, right? But for this purpose of this demo and this session, we will just go with this, right? So I specified my iOS, I specified my username, I specified my password, and I'm all good to go, right? So these are the basic files that you will need: ansible.cfg, host file, and then playbook file. Before playbook, we'll try to execute some ad hoc commands, right? Now, in Ansible, the primary executable is called as Ansible, which is used to execute ad hoc commands. In addition to this, we have some special executables, right? For example, if you want to, as you're going to see later, if you want to execute playbooks, we have something called as Ansible playbook, right? If you want to check Ansible documentation, we have something called as Ansible doc, right? Let's say you want to check something to do with the inventory. You have an executable called as Ansible inventory, right? So let's use this Ansible inventory and then list the hosts which are mentioned in inventory so that we'll know, yes, we have not made any mistake while creating our inventory file or our config file. Okay. So yeah, it has connected to my inventory. It is fetching me the details. So my inventory is fine. So it is saying host vars. There's a host. There are some variables which are associated with that, right? Which it termed as host vars. The host vars which are associated with the host R1 are these. Ansible host is this IP address. Ansible network OS is iOS. Ansible password is Cisco. Ansible user is admin. Now there's only one host which is grouped under all and iOS routers. Okay. By default, there are two groups in every Ansible inventory file: all and ungrouped. All is like any device, any host that you add will belong to that. Now here you say I've grouped R1 into iOS routers. Let's say I had another router or some other device which I have not added under any group. that will belong to ungrouped. That is the meaning of all ungrouped. Okay, my inventory file is fine. So I can use another command to check. Ansible. Now I can say I'm using executable Ansible. Right? Now when I'm using Ansible, I will have to tell which host should it connect to. Right? Typically we'll say all, or we'll say R1, or we can also say iOS underscore routers. Right? First name, we can specify the group. By default, all hosts belong to all group. Right? I can specify this Ansible all minus minus list hyphen hosts. So I'm asking it to list all the hosts which belong to this group called as all. So I get this list called as R1 because as of now, there's only one device R1 which is grouped under all also. Let's say I say which are the hosts which are belonging to iOS routers. Again, is the same. Right? Suppose I had another group, then if I say all, both the devices will come. If I say only this group, the device only which is present in this group will come. Okay, so I'm good to start giving, let's say, our first run command. Right? Typically, when we connect to any network device, we would like to check the interface details, right? Using SHIP INTBR. So how we will do that in case of Ansible is Ansible. Then we have to specify which all hosts to connect to, right? We can simply specify the host name also because we have seen the other examples. We can say all, we can say iOS routers, or we can simply say R1. Right? Ansible R1. Ansible executable, go and connect to R1. Right? I've not specified one more value in my inventory or host file. I specified network OS, I specified user password, but I have not specified what is the connection mechanism that should be used, connection mode. Ansible underscore connection. Okay. Now, as I said, like we have different SSH by default, which is not supported on network devices. Then we had local, which is deprecated now. So the other option, latest option is network underscore CLI. Right? We can by default use this as a connection mode for all networking devices. Accordingly, it will figure out which specific shell, right, based to give. So it will use network CLI and the network OS, Ansible network OS, to figure out how to execute these commands. Okay. So now I have Ansible connection mechanism also. I'll say Ansible connect to R1, use the module, right, -m, which stands for module. Use the module called as iOS underscore command, right? Ansible R1 -m, iOS underscore command. Then what is the commands? -a, what are the commands to be given? -a is like arguments, right? Commands is equal to SHIP INT BR, right? So it might look a little confusing at this point, right? Specifying all these things, but with little practice, we'll get used to it. Ansible followed by host name followed by -m, which says that yes, what is going to follow is the name of some module. -m iOS command. Now this module expects certain parameters to be passed, which is like, since this module is iOS command, it expects what are the commands. So we'll pass that using -a commands is equal to the actual command. Right? We'll run it. So Ansible is going to use network CLI. It is going to connect to this device R1. It is going to execute this command and it is going to show the output of this SHIP INTBR. But along with this, it also showed some other data, right? Some other values. So by default, this is the entire response that Ansible gets back, right? From that, we'll have to use it. This is JSON format. The topmost is Ansible facts. Then there is something. Then changed is false, std out. So this std out contains your actual information, and then std out lines contains your formatted information. Okay. Now we'll see how we can do the same thing using a playbook. Right? We'll keep this command handy so that we'll see how we can draw parallel between this IDOC command and the playbook that we are writing. Okay, so this is our command. We'll start writing playbook here itself. Right? So we saw that playbook starts with this, then name of the play, playbook to run, show, interface command, right? Then indentation, since it is coming here, I need to give 1, 2 to reach here, right? 2 spaces. What comes here? Host, which host to talk to, right? Hosts are R1. Then indentation, gather underscore facts. No, we discussed that there are some values which will be collected. We are saying don't do that. Don't waste time. Then tasks, like you can give these free lines for the readability. It will not cause any issues. Only indentation is problem, not the new line. Right? Since we finished the top header section and we are moving to the task section, I normally give this free line so that it makes my playbook more readable. Tasks is the header. The first task is in run show interface command. That's my task. This is the name I'm giving to this command. Which module to be used? iOS underscore command. You see, the module used here we have specified -m iOS command. Under task, we specify the same name. Right? Now to this, we passed an argument using -a commands. Right? So inside this, the commands will come. Right? Here the actual command will come. shipint. Yeah. Right? Now there's a slight difference between IDOC command and playbook. While IDOC command executes and shows the output, playbook executes, but it does not display the output because it is meant for performing some task. But if you want to see the output, we'll have to capture the output into a variable and then display it. Right? The way we do it is we have a utility called as register. Right? Now the module I'm using is iOS command. So at the same level, I'll use this utility called as register and specify name of some variable. Right? This is the name of a variable. I can give anything. So what I've done is I'm saying the output of iOS command should be registered in this variable. Then I have another module called as debug. Print output command. So I'll use the module called as debug. Just like how you have typical debugging. Debugging means a normal way developers debug their code is by printing the value of variables at any point of time, right? Because variables are the data that they're manipulating through their code. So by looking at the status of variables at any point of time, they'll be able to know what is happening, whether something is going right, wrong. Same thing we are doing, right? We are debugging. We are saying, show me the value which is stored in this variable called as output. Right? Where is this variable output coming from? It has been created in the previous task via this register utility. And so register is going to store the output of this command in this, output of this entire command in this, and then using the debug module to display it. Right? So we'll copy this. We'll copy this content. We'll say nano playbook. let's say playbook 1 dot YML. Right? You can use the extension either YAML or YML, both of them work. And then we'll paste the content, save it. As I said, right, for executing playbook, we have an executable called as Ansible -playbook. And then we need to supply name of the playbook. Yeah, it executes and we get our output. Okay, as I said, since this is let's say JSON, you see the topmost variable is output. Inside that we have all these variables. Now in this is the actual output that I'm interested in, right? std out. Now std out is a Python list because it has this square bracket notation, right? So I want to extract, let's say, this value which is inside it. So I'll have to refer to it as output dot std out JSON parsing. Output dot the next level std out. Now std out is an array. From that, I have to go inside that list and get the first element, which happens to be 0. So I'll edit my playbook. I'll say, instead of printing everything, print output dot std out of 0. Right? From output, take std out, which happens to be an array list. From that list, print the 0th element. Okay, we get our output. Of course, it is looking like this, but when we try to write to this file, it will exactly look how we'll be seeing it on our command line. Otherwise, we had the other option, std out lines, right? We can use that for if it's just for display purposes. So instead of std out, I use std out underscore lines. But then that is an entire list, so I can just print it as it is. Okay, you get a better output. Right? Now we'll modify this to, let's say, extract running configuration. Like we'll convert this playbook into running config backup script, right? Taking backup of an existing the device, right? So we'll edit it. So how do we get running config? Instead of sh IP int br, we'll run sh run. Right? sh run will extract the running config, which is stored in output. Now from output, what we need is std out of 0th element. Now instead of printing this, we'll use another module called as copy. Save output to file. Okay? That's the name of my task. The module to be used in this task is copy. And ultimately, copy is a Python program which knows how to take the content which I'm going to pass it to it and write to a file. Now, copy expects copy works in two ways. Either you can directly give some text content and specify a destination to which file it is to be returned, or you can specify name of a source file and specify destination. The source file will be copied to the destination. Either copy the content to a file or copy one file to other file. So we are here, we are copying the content. So we'll say content. What is our content? This is our content. And we have to specify dest. destination. Right? We'll put it in the current directory itself. Or yeah, here what we can do is we can there are some, as I said, there are some built-in variables, right? So we can yeah. Now here another thing is, here we are directly referring to this as a variable, so we can directly use it. But here we are saying this is content. Typically content is text, right? So the string here will be treated as text, but this is not a text, this is a variable, right? So we'll have to specify it in a slightly separate way, right? This is a Jinja or Ansible style of specifying variables, right? Because we have to do all this to say that yes, this output dot std out of 0 should not be treated as a text and then write the same thing, same text to the file, right? Treat it as a variable so that you can extract the value of it and then write the content. So we'll have to specify it like this curly brace notation. Now why we are putting this outside is, if I start this directly with curly brace, Ansible YAML also can parse JSON content, which starts with this curly braces, right? So it should not misunderstand this to be JSON content. So we are putting it inside the single quotes, right? With practice, you'll get used to it. But for now, whenever we are specifying this variable, we'll stick to this notation. Only in debug module, if you are using var command to display the value of a variable, we'll not be doing all this jugglery. We'll directly specify the variable name. Everywhere else, if you are referring to a variable, this is the way we'll be referencing a variable. We'll start a string. Inside that, we'll have double curly braces. Inside that, we'll have name of the variable. Right? Now, same way for the destination, I'll take the name of the file from a variable. Right? There's a variable called as inventory underscore host name. Right? The name of the host which we have specified inside inventory, which is R1. It is stored in this built-in variable. So I want to name my file as r1.txt. So I'll get this value from this variable and then .txt, I'll append that. Right? Do an ls. Right? We do not have any files yet. Let's execute this playbook. Running the command. Ran successfully, saving the output. It saved and it also printed. Right? Now this save output, you see it is shown in yellow, which means yes, it has done some task, like it has done the task of creating a file and writing a content to it. How we can check? We gave the location as same folder. So we'll do an ls. Now we have this r1.txt, but with these funny codes. So let's go and modify our playbook. Inventory.hostname. Why those codes are coming is because, let me check my, this is R1. The file is already there, so it did not create, so it will just show it in green if it does not change anything. Nano. Okay, for now we'll just hardcode the value. ls, we have running config.txt, do a nano running config.txt. We have our running config, need to return to it. Okay. Now let's write another playbook for doing configuration change. Playbook 2.yaml. Right, the configuration change that we'll be making is, let's say we can create a loopback adapter. Host R1 gather underscore no So we have given a name. So the module to be used is iOS underscore config, right? Now the parameters to iOS underscore config, normally we say config lines, right? So accordingly, they have called this as lines. Now this lines, right? When you enter the conft mode, it says start giving your commands one per line, right? So like that, typically configuration expects a list of commands. So here also we will be providing a list of commands. Okay? So we'll say interface loopback. Let's say we already have till 50. So let me choose, let's say 60. At interface loopback 60. Then IP address is, let's say 60.0.0.1. Mask is 255.255.255.0. So this will go and create it. Now let's say we want to see whether it is being created or not. So what we'll do, we can use get interface details. We can use iOS command, what we have done previously. We can give commands and we can store the output of this in just like how we had done previously and then print it. Okay, set, let's see. So we can see that yeah, command has come here, right, from the console. Yeah, if we come here, yes, our 60 adapter is configured and it has been brought up. Right. So if you do the command here, yes, it is configured. Okay, that is how you can run configuration commands. Now the process is going to be pretty much similar. This is what typically happens in Ansible. You have modules. You have to go to the documentation, figure out what values to be passed to a module, and accordingly use that module in your playbook. Okay. Thank you. We'll see you in another video with another interesting topic. Thanks.